rather unkindly at the pub the other day, I said to me that if governing is the school prom and it's compulsory to take a partner, New Zealand First is the last person that gets chosen to go.
The wallflower at the party. Nobody wants to dance.
New Zealand First, that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm Simon Ewing-Jarvie.
And I'm Heather Roy.
And we'll follow a similar pattern as we have with the other parties, right, Heather?
That's right. We're going to just do a very brief history of New Zealand First, where they've come from, where they sit on the political spectrum, who the key people are, and what you can expect from the party in the election campaign. And should the wallflower status change, what might you expect from New Zealand First if they are in government after the 19th of September?
Yeah, I suppose it's a bit mean actually saying wallflower. I know Winston Peters would like to identify himself as the kingmaker. He puts governments in and has exerted a considerable amount of influence over those governments on multiple occasions from a relatively small number of MPs.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, he's been part of the first MMP government with the National Party, and he has also been part of 2 Labour governments. So he's not been unsuccessful in his political bidding.
So what's the potted history of New Zealand First?
Right, well, the party was formed in 1993. That came shortly after Winston Peters resigned from the New Zealand National Party in March 1993, over, I think...
Wellington Airport privatisation, as I recall.
So it was a matter of principle for him. And then, of course, the party successfully campaigned at the first MMP election in 1996 and became part of government. It hasn't been all smooth sailing, though. Winston has always courted controversy, and after a Privileges Committee outing over political donations, he was out of Parliament. He and his party were out of Parliament from 2008 to 2011.
You sat on that Privileges Committee,
I
did.
Yeah. It was very interesting. Yeah.
Okay, well, where do we find them? nzfirst.nz. Their campaign slogan, Heather?
Is balanced, effective, common sense. Although the billboards all say back our future, which
back
people...
your future, is it?
Back your future,
yeah.
Which people are a little unkindly talking about as being back to the future.
I'm waiting to see a black and white DeLorean pull up.
Yes.
Anyway, so on the podcast that we ran about the political spectrum, where did we put these guys?
They're a bit harder to pin down than some of the others. They're definitely conservative in nature, so they're on our political spectrum down towards the bottom. They're probably relatively moderate. They can go either way, as it shows by the fact that they've been part of national governments and Labour governments in terms of economic policy. So they're down to the bottom and somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. They for me, they swing slightly left on the economic scale towards the socialist end, because there's a lot of redistribution policy amongst the, Super Gold Card is one example, and then more recently they've announced a return of a universal family benefit. So this is redistribution of wealth, isn't it? So.
Yeah, it is. And look, some people would describe them as nationalist and populist.
Yeah.
Winston certainly is a very clever and able politician, and he knows what buttons to push, particularly at election time.
Doesn't he just? Right. So apart from Winston, who are the other key people? They've got 9 MPs, right?
Yeah, so there's Winston, and there's Winston.
Oh, and Winston.
And there's Brian Henry, and Winston.
Yeah. Okay, well, one was elected. And apart from that...
Shane Jones.
Shane Jones is pretty well known.
Figure, having been a Labour minister himself before. Ron Marks, pretty well known. Current Defence Minister. And Tracy Martin, I guess, also has been a minister in this government, and so has had a reasonable amount of profile. And Fletcher Tabato, who is the deputy leader, is a parliamentary under secretary, isn't he, for Foreign Affairs? Right.
But basically working as Winston's sidekick there, almost like an associate minister, but not.
Yes, and some people did think that he might be being touted as the new leader when Winston finally retires, but there's certainly been no movement in that space.
And they haven't got a list out yet, have they? No.
New Zealand First famously always leave their list to the very last moment, and that's about 3 weeks out from the election date. So Winston waits. The party lists have to be lodged with the Electoral Commission by midday on the designated date. Winston always announces his party list at 11 a.m.
Well, they're not polling very well. They're down around 2%. They don't have an electorate seat. I think expecting Shane Jones, or hoping that Shane Jones will win Northland, is a long haul. He's polling third there. So it could be the end, but you never count the old
Never
Tusker
ever
out, do you?
count Winston out, no. It's probably the most common saying around Parliament.
Yeah. It is getting harder to see them get back
I
there. So.
think they must be worried, and because they are in serious trouble. They're not going to win an electorate seat, which means they're dependent on reaching that 5% threshold, and a whole raft of polls done quite recently, they've failed, except in one poll, to get anything above 2%.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you what we can expect from the party in the election campaign, but look, I went to their website, which looks fine, until you click on policies, and it takes you to a login page where you have to log in to presumably to see the policies, and so I did. This was one of because they've changed their website a couple of times. I used to follow them, so I've set up an account, and it accepted all that. So they've got all my personal detail, and then I went to click on policies again, having logged in,
And
it took me back to the set up an account page.
Oh, you had to log in twice.
I was in the death loop. So
okay, well, that's not particularly helpful.
they're not going to campaign on digital strategy.
No, I don't think so. And it's not helped by the fact that they really have announced very little. Winston had his campaign launch a few weeks ago.
Right.
And there was very little in the way of policy being talked about there. Really, it was just appealing to, I think, his constituency with a raft of sort of platitudes and slogans, really,
and attacking
the best you would say, and attacking the Greens. So definitely he doesn't want to be in government with the Greens again, but as you said earlier, he does want to be in a kingmaker position, but that is dependent on the party being there.
So Tracy Martin at their campaign launch announced the return of the universal family benefit, which was around when we were kids and our parents were able to pay off mortgages or
I think my parents bought their home by capitalising their family benefit.
But they haven't put any money against it yet. They've just said, well, it's a good idea, but it's going to be for everyone. So no matter how wealthy you are, you're going to get under their policy. You're going to get it, and I just worry that it might be £3 per child. Was it sixpence or something? And also, what else have we had? Announcement was Winston suggested getting the older people, the baby boomers and the generation beyond us, to come out of retirement or semi-retirement or come in and help basically retrain people who are made redundant as a result of COVID and need to get on.
Well, nice idea, but he's going to have a bit more of a plan around that one, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. And traditionally, history would show that the policies for the New Zealand First Party haven't been well developed and certainly have never been well costed. So it's dependent on, I think, Winston deciding what the buttons are that are going to attract that core vote for him and campaigning on those issues, which he hasn't done to date. Yeah.
So, I mean, if you look back to 2017 and they were going to have an armed Coast Guard, well, we're still waiting.
Yep.
They were going to have quite a substantial defence force, a return of the air combat force, a bigger reserve. Well, it's just fail.
That's right.
And that's only one policy area.
Yep.
And when I confronted Ron Mark about that at AIA, what they'd done about it, which was nothing, he just said, it's politics. Just smile.
I'm sure we'll be able to expect some addition to the Super Gold card provisions.
Bound to, yep. Okay, so if he does manage to swing his way back into a government next term, what can we expect?
I think that we could expect him to actually be in that kingmaker position and determine who the government will be. I think the election's actually going to be relatively close, much closer than the polls are dictating at the moment. So it's not inconceivable that we might have the same sort of situation we did this time, in which case I think he would choose to go with Labour as long as the Greens weren't part of that arrangement.
I think he would see it much more palatable. I could be unkind and say he probably would find Jacinda Ardern a little easier to control than Judith Collins. That's the blunt part of it,
That's right.
He wouldn't get nearly as many concessions with National. The other problem is whether National and ACT would be prepared collectively to work with them to make the three-party coalition. I think that would actually be a terrible mix of personalities and policies and egos. But that's what you have.
It would. And look, it might just be that the campaign turns into moderating the excesses of either side, which he's done successfully before. It's always a bit dangerous to make a prediction about election outcomes and which parties might be there or might not be, but if I was pressed at the moment, I'd have to say I don't think that New Zealand First will make it back.
No, I agree. Well, have we got anything else to say?
I don't think so. We'll await with anticipation the policies and the party list.
Right, well, that's it. If you'd like to send in a question, you can go to our contacts page on our website, torquepoint.co.nz. That's TORQUE. And we're also on social media on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. That's it from me. I'm Simon Ewing-Jarvie.
And I'm Heather Roy. We'll talk to you soon.